All right. So we were looking at uh, the overall flow of the compilation, and when we are talking about compiler in many aspects, there is some nomenclature which one should know, and this you might encounter at multiple places. And I thought that I will just mention it a priori, the difference between this static and dynamic. It occurs in different contexts, even within compilers, it occurs in different contexts. And it's important that we know um, all those contexts so that it doesn't remain confusing. So one context that it appears in is the time, which means the time of uh, so for example, okay, yeah, so I'll mention all of that. So time, then the compilation could be static and dynamic, optimizations could be static, dynamic, analysis of the program could be static, dynamic. There could be a static type versus dynamic type. Some of that you might recall from our object-oriented lab. Linking could be static and dynamic, as we discussed, and the scoping of variables could be also static and dynamic. So let's look at that a little bit. So the time of the static time usually refers to the compilation time, and the dynamic time usually refers to the execution time, right? So that is one context in which it gets used. But in some other ways, it also gets used as when you are talking about a pre-processing. The pre-processing could be viewed as a static part, and the compilation could be viewed as the dynamic part, right? So this also happens, and you should be aware that depending upon the context, it might be used in this manner. Then the static compilation versus dynamic compilation is little different, where we are talking about the code is getting converted, source code or IR is getting converted into the execution machine code statically, let's say by GCC, G++. That is static compilation, whereas there is just-in-time compilation, which takes, let's say, a byte code and then converts it into the execution machine code at runtime. For example, as happens in the Java virtual machine. Right? So that is a dynamic environment, dynamic compilation. There are static and dynamic optimization. So in the context of optimization, this gets used. The meaning of this is that you have the input available or not available. So if the input is not available, then it is static optimization. If the input is available, then that is called as a dynamic optimization. So many times if the input is not available, then the compiler makes what you call as approximations. I mean, in the sense that it does not know what exactly the input is going to be, and therefore it makes pessimistic assumptions about what the input could be. It assumes that the input could be arbitrary because the compilation needs to be correct. And therefore it might disable certain optimizations. Whereas in the context where the input is available, it can make more optimistic optimizations, right? So that is input dependent. So that happens at, so that also is static versus dynamic optimization comes into picture here. There is also static analysis and dynamic analysis. This is similar to static and dynamic compilation, but we are not talking about full compilation. We are just talking about analyzing the program and extracting some information about it. For example, you might be interested in figuring out whether certain properties are satisfied at different program points, right? So this information about different variables, what are the properties that they have, whether different variables have any relationships between them, etc. This analysis can be done without the environment. That is, without environment consists of both the input as well as the other parts. For example, you might have a particular file system, or you might have certain environment variables, etc. So all of that comes as part of the environment. So using that environment, when you do that, is called as a dynamic analysis. So yeah, so and then there is static versus dynamic types. For example, inheritance and virtual functions lead to dynamic typing, as we have studied before. There is also the notion of type with respect to strongly typed versus very weakly typed languages or untyped languages, where strongly typed means that statically the type of each variable is known, whereas in the context of scripting languages, the type may not be known at compile time. In fact, depending upon the context, the type of a variable might keep changing, etc., or it might not be used at all. I mean, the type may not be specified by the user. Depending upon what you do, what the operation you do with respect to a variable, you figure out that the type could be an integer and so on. So you can have, for example, number 5, put it into a string. So double quote 5 double quote, let's say it's a string in a particular language, and you can say that string plus 10, right? So this is possible to be done in a scripting language, where although it is a string, you are performing a plus operation on it, which is integer plus. Depending upon that operation, the string 5 will get converted into number 5 and then added with 10 to give the actual result. So this is possible in a weakly typed or untyped language. As we discussed, there is static and dynamic linking. .a files versus .so files essentially comes into picture here. And then there is a notion of static and dynamic scoping, which is something which we are going to look in slightly more detail with an example. Any questions on any of this? There is some chat message. What do we mean by input being available? As in, if we are reading from a file, or for dynamic, do we mean at runtime from terminal? Yes. So the input being available means that you are giving the input for performing some analysis. For example, let's say that you are performing some debugging session. Right? So for, let's say there was some place where it was giving a seg fault, and now you want to analyze this particular execution to identify where that error occurred. Because as far as when you have just the code and you are performing the analysis, you are not able to figure that out because of various reasons. But for a particular run with a particular input, you are able to get that unexpected behavior. In such cases, the input needs to be given. So the program is running, even let's say running via debugger, and you are trying to identify what are the variables and their values, what are the memory locations, etc. This analysis can be done dynamically. So you are right that it is about the input that is given either from a file or from a terminal, etc. Shavik says that Visual Basic has data-driven type called variant. A equal to 10 means A is integer, A equal to 10.0 means A is float. Yes, sure. So that is an example of a dynamic typing. Naveen is asking about analysis part. So, okay. Yeah, more on this you will probably study in, depending upon your interest. There is a program analysis course which happens in the department. But let me briefly give you an example. Let's say that you are given a program. You convert it into some intermediate representation or some graphical, graph-like form. Like there is a notion of control flow graph, which we are going to study towards the end of this course. But let's say that you store it in some reasonable form, which says that from this statement you are going to go to this statement, or there is a branching, so you might go to, let's say, 2 of these statements and so on. There might be a loop, so you might come back and so on, right? So you are given some representation of the program, and there is some property which you want to verify or verify or validate. So let's say that we are interested in certain verification. For example, there might be an assertion which you have added, and if the compiler can figure out that that assertion is always true, let's say x greater than 0 is the assertion, and if the compiler can figure out that all the values that get passed at this particular stage where that assertion is, x is always going to be above 0, then there is no need to have that assertion check, right? Assertion is essentially internally creating a conditional, and based on the conditional value, that is that x greater than 0 as the conditional, it will take some path. So that check can be avoided if you know that a particular variable is always greater than 0. So that x greater than 0 can be removed, that assertion can be removed, but for that the compiler needs to perform some analysis. That analysis is essentially looking at what are the different values that variable x can have. right? In this case, there could be other assertions. For example, you might have, let's say, an fread in your program, but you have not done an fopen, right? This requires the compiler to figure out that there is some, let's say there are different paths, there are if-else statements, and along one if there is fopen, but there is no fopen along the else, and then there is an fread. So the compiler needs to figure out that along the if path there is an fopen, but along the else path there is no fopen, and therefore there is a possibility that fread might be executed without an fopen. If this compiler can figure out, then it can give a warning or an error during the compilation time itself. Right? So this is called as a program analysis, and there are, like whatever I mentioned, that is a static version of the program analysis. In the dynamic version, typically we will be identifying, for example, for debugging we can use a dynamic analysis, or you might be interested in probably figuring out let's say the memory usage of a particular program based on certain inputs. So you give an input or a class of inputs, and based on that you try to figure out, the runtime tries to figure out how much memory a particular program might be taking. This might be useful in an embedded setting. For example, you are developing a program for mobile phones which might probably have a few GB of memory, and therefore you want your program to take only minimal amount of storage, etc. So all of this happens at dynamically runtime. Therefore, this is called as a dynamic analysis. Is analysis used in the context of formal verification here? Yes. Analysis does get, so analysis is one important piece of verification, right? So verification means that there is some property which you want to check if it is satisfied by a program. For example, the example that I gave, x greater than 0 or x plus y is always less than 10. In the real setting, you might say that the account balance of any bank account should not go below 0, right? Or should not go below 1 lakh, depending upon different facilities which are provided by different different banks. So this verification comes into picture, or that the number of, the total amount of money that goes from one account to another, that should remain constant, right? So there should be a debit and then there should be a credit. If it is within the same bank, then those amounts should tally, right? So this is also an example of a property which needs to be satisfied by a particular program. You are developing some reactive system like lift, then in such cases you might have a property to be satisfied that that software which you have built, it should never happen that the door opens between the two floors, right? So the door should always open only at a particular floor. It should not open somewhere in between, and so on. So there are other properties, safety properties and liveness properties. These are two different notions which get used in the context of verification. So there are some safety properties which make sure that this, for example, the door doesn't open in between. Or there could be a liveness property which makes sure that if somebody presses a button at a particular floor, irrespective of where the lift is, eventually the lift comes at that floor, right? There is a property which must be satisfied by that software which is running that lift. So this becomes a property which needs to be verified. So yeah, so the formal verification is definitely the context in which analysis gets used. Yeah, so Shovik has mentioned the safety and liveness analysis. Correct. All right, so there were enough questions on this. Let's move ahead. Let's talk about the static and dynamic scoping. That's an important part, and okay, let's discuss that. So in the context of C, we use static scoping. What that means is that, or in fact all the languages that you have seen so far, by and large we have seen only static scoping. What this means is that given this program which has this I equal to 2 is a local variable in main, there is I equal to 1 which is a global variable. Now there is a variable which gets used in function f. Which variable does it refer to? Does it refer to the global variable or does it refer to the local variable in main? This is decided by whether the language has a static or dynamic scoping. So we all know that this variable I is going to be a global variable. That is called as a static scoping. What this means is that f is currently, I mean, just by looking at the program, you are able to figure out that f is specified in the global scope, right? Or let me put it this way, that variable I as part of printf is part of function f. Function f is currently seen in the global scope, and therefore whatever is there in the global scope, that will be taken as the environment from which this variable is coming. For example, if there would have been a variable defined inside f with the name I, then that variable, which is the latest one, is going to be taken because that is in the local scope or the static scope for this printf. There could be a nested braces or nested scopes, and that nested scoping you are able to figure out just by looking at the program, right? So the compiler, like a user, will be able to figure out that a particular variable is referring to the static portion just by looking at the program. So therefore it is called as a static scoping. In contrast, if a language supports dynamic scoping, right? So none of our languages, or let me put it this way, that most of the part that we have studied does not support dynamic scoping, but there are reasons why we are studying that, and I will mention that to you soon. In case of dynamic scoping, the variable I in printf is going to refer to from where f is going to get called. Right? So in this case, since it is getting called from main, I will, under dynamic scoping, printf's I is going to refer to I equal to 2 from main. If f gets called from some other function also, then compiler will not be able to figure out which I it is referring to. It is going to be deferred till runtime because different functions might call f, and therefore the value of I will be different from different contexts. So the compiler will not be able to figure that out. We will require runtime execution environment to figure out what the dynamic scope of a particular variable is, and that is called as a dynamic scoping. So under static scoping, the output of this program is going to be 1, which is the global variable. Under dynamic scoping, it is going to be 2. Right? I hope this is clear. In case there are questions, please write in the chat. Okay, so the question here is, where do we use dynamic scoping? So I said that in most cases we have used static scoping, but there is one place where we actually use dynamic scoping. Has anybody encountered that? How does code generation happen in dynamic scoping? Yeah, so for all the purposes, anything that is dynamic, the compiler will generate code, but the compiler will generate conditional code. For example, virtual functions. We said that a base pointer can point to the derived class object. And then when I do base class pointer arrow some fun, it is not clear which fun it is referring to because the type of that variable is dictated by the runtime execution. And therefore, we need to have some mechanism, some information stored, which is available at runtime. The compiler will not be able to figure out exactly which function is going to get called. So that is our VTBL, which we were discussing earlier. So that virtual table needs to be embedded at runtime, but the code corresponding to that, you have to traverse the virtual table. That code is generated by the compiler. Similarly here, the code that will be generated here is going to be checking what is the execution context of f, and from there, that is what is the caller of f, and if that variable is going to be present in that caller. If not, then you have to go back to the caller of the caller and so on until you hit the global scope. And that also means that if the variable is not defined in any of these scopes, then at runtime you might get the error, right? That the variable is undefined. This is unheard of, but the reason being that we usually use static scoping. So this happens in the so the code generation is conditional, and that searching is involved. Yeah. Okay. So any suggestions on where do we use dynamic scoping? Dynamic scoping sort of happens with the environment variables in Linux. I didn't understand that. So, can you explain that? So we have environment variables in Linux, and how does we use dynamic scoping there? The environment variables in the current context are read and used. Mm, no, that will not be called as a dynamic scoping. So even the variables that we use in our program, their values are not known at compile time. Right? So we are going to know about their values only at runtime, or most of them are going to be coming at runtime. So the environment variables will also be coming at runtime, and they will have their values. But the dynamic scoping will mean that if I am accessing a variable X or environment variable Y, it's which variable I am referring to. That cannot be known at compile. Even if I am using an environment variable, I will know precisely what environment variable I am talking about just by looking at the program. Just that its value may not be known. Right? But yeah. So okay. So since there are no answers, I'll just mention that we use dynamic scoping in the context of macros. Right? In the hash defines that we have. So for example, if I have this f as a macro, then the variable that I am going to refer to it is going to be decided by the execution context of that macro. If I call it from main, the execution context is going to be main, because that macro's code is going to get almost copied within main, whereas if I am calling it from some other function g, then the variable I that I will refer to will be from that g, right? So we don't view it as a dynamic scoping example, but from the perspective of compiler theory, macros or preprocessing actually uses this dynamic scoping, so you should know about that. Okay, so just a quick classwork. What we are going to do is that we have three variables, global, and then there are a couple of functions, gun and fun. And then there is main, and then there is a nested scope in that. Main is calling fun as well as gun, and then followed by fun. And what you want to identify is the output of this program under static and dynamic scope. Right? So can somebody, so let's see, I'll give you a small time, please work on that. So think about C when you are thinking about static program, the static scoping, and then think about the execution context, calling context to think about the dynamic scoping. So please work on that, and I'll wait for some time for people to write their answers. Okay, let's discuss the static scoping first. B equal to 4 and fun AB. So these AB are going to refer to this A equal to 3 and B equal to 4. Those values are going to get assigned to XY and those are going to get printed here. So this will print 3, 4. Then gun AY, this A is going to refer to the current environment, right? So A is not defined here, so it will look at the global environment. So A equal to 1 is going to get passed and Y equal to 4 is going to get passed. And here you will print XB and all that is fine. In a other call gun AB, this A is coming from the local main, whereas B is coming from global, B equal to 2. So this is going to pass 3, 2 to gun. Fun AB is again going to call 3, 2 to fun, that is going to get printed as XY. Y is going to be 2, but A is going to be the global variable 1, right? So gun is going to get called with 1 value, right? So that is our usual C-like static scoping. I'll wait for a few more seconds for the dynamic scoping to be done by you. Okay, static says 3, 4, that is correct. 1, 4, that is correct. Then 3, 2, that is correct. Then 3, 2, in the static scoping, will this be 3? Oh no, fun is going to get called. Okay, yeah. So that will be 3, 2, that is correct. And then that is going to call 1, 2. Yeah, that is correct. So what Cairo has written, that seems to be the correct output for static. For dynamic, Rudra says this thing. If somebody has a different answer, please post that. We'll discuss. Oh, I see. Okay, so this is for static. Raghu has given some answer for dynamic. Deepesh has given. Shivaram has given. Okay. Okay, all the answers seem to be the same. Sarthak has given the answer. Okay, so let's check that. Or would somebody want to explain that? Hearing the explanation. Can somebody explain how you got this answer, dynamic scoping? Anyone? Raghu, Deepesh, Shivaram, Sarthak? Okay, no, okay, fine. So let's check that. So as far as fun AB is concerned, that anyway is the local scope, so that goes as 3, 4, and that is the value that is going to get printed here as 3, 4. Then gun AY, this is where the interesting part comes. Y is still, sorry, Y is still 4, so that is okay. But as far as A is concerned, that is not defined in fun. And in case of static scoping, we would have said A is coming from global, but in the dynamic scoping, we will have to say that A is coming from the caller of fun, which in this case is main, and the value of A is going to be 3 here, and therefore this is going to be called with 3, 4. Right? That gets printed here, XB, so therefore the second printf is also 3, 4. Right? So this prints 3, 4 and this prints 3, 4. For this fun AB. Now, sorry, gun AB, this A is referring to again the local, this B is not defined here, and therefore we have to go to the caller of main, which incidentally happens to be the global scope, and therefore we'll have to say that B is going to be 2 here. So gun gets called with 3, 2, which gets printed here. So that will be the third line of the output, which is 3, 2. Fun AB is again 3, 2, and that gets printed here. So that is the fourth line of the output, that is 3, 2. Again, A is interesting. Y is 2, but that A is coming from the caller, and in the caller, the value of A here is going to be 3, and therefore it prints 3, 2 in the gun. So that is the fifth line of the output. Okay, so that answer seems to be correct. Any other suggestions? Any confusions? Okay, so we'll move ahead from here. The parameter passing also has different variants when it comes to different programming languages. And two of these definitely is something which we have seen. For example, pass by value, which is there in C, and pass by reference, as is there in C++. But there are two more which get used in different contexts. And again, we'll feel that this is something which is outside the scope of C, C++, but it has some connection. So let me state that. So there are 4 types of typical parameter passing mechanisms. There could be more, but these are the ones which get usually discussed. So call by value is something which we know, right? So this happens in C. Call by reference, it's supported in C++. The reference part also comes into picture in C when we are dealing with arrays. So arrays are passed by reference. So the third type of parameter passing is called as call by name, and what this means is that you are essentially so you are essentially whatever is the parameter passed, right, or what the expression passed, that expression gets more like literally substituted when you use it. For example, if this is f of star IP, right, from main, I have this function called f of star IP. Then wherever I use x, that is star IP, that is replaced by star IP. Right? So here, here, and here is like star IP. Okay, so let me go back here. So that is more like string-wise substitution which is happening of that expression, right? So which definitely does not happen in the context of pass by value and pass by reference. And that call by name, again, where it gets used is our macros. So if this would have been a macro, then essentially that is what would have happened if f would have been a macro, right? So there is a string-wise substitution happening. So that is where we use call by name. Call by value result is something which was used in ADA. ADA is a programming language, and Ada Lovelace is supposed to be the first programmer also. Our MR1, the meeting room 1, is named after her. So in case of value result, the pass by value happens for the parameter. So when I say f of star IP, then X gets the value of star IP and so on. So all of this within this function, X is a different variable, right? Because it is passed by value. So across all of this, star IP does not change. However, at the end of the function, at the end of the functions, the variables are returned to back. So as soon as function f ends, during the function X was passed by value or star IP was passed by value, but at the end of the function, that variable X's value is going to get returned to star IP. Right? So that is called as value result. So it is passed by value initially, but at the end of the function, the result is copied back. Right? So that is used in ADA. And now what, if there are any confusions, please ask, otherwise I'll ask you to work out the values of the value that gets printed here, or the output of this program under each of these different parameter passing mechanisms. So any questions on this one? How is the value result different from reference? Yeah, so that is what will become clear, because the output of pass by reference and pass by value result will turn out to be different. So okay, I'll mention that to you. What happens in case of reference is that when you have X equal to 3, in case of value result, you are changing the value of the local variable X. In case of reference, you are actually changing star IP. And the reason why this will appear, this will give, I mean, in general you would have gotten the same value, but because IP is getting reinitialized here, therefore the value is going to change. Right? So we should get a different answer in pass by reference and pass by value result. If there are, let me put it this way, if that variable, for example, this expression in the variable involved in the expression that is being passed does not get reassigned a value, then the output of pass by value, pass by reference and pass by value result will turn out to be the same. Okay, so I have this output here mentioned, call by value is 1. Is that correct? Anishwar say that will final result call by name and reference change. Okay, I think there are more questions. Last part again, didn't understand exactly. Okay, will final result of call by name and reference change. Okay, what we'll do, Kairav and Rudra, will try to understand what happens depending upon whatever we know exactly about pass by reference and pass by value. We'll just apply that mechanically and see what the outputs are. And after that, we'll come back to your question, right? So I'm hoping that there will be some more understanding when we try to apply whatever we have studied so far. Anishwar's question is, will final result of call by name and reference change? Yes. So that is to think about that if you pass by as a pre-processing macro and then pass by reference, will the outputs be different? Yes, the outputs will differ, and this example is constructed very carefully. It's not there in the book. I have created it. So so you should check if I am making any mistake, right? So we'll study that. So we'll go over this. Call by value seems to be one that I will not go into, that you can figure out easily. Please tell me the output of call by reference. Value 1, reference is 6. Okay. Okay, so meanwhile, those who want to go ahead, just try what happens in the call by name, but I'll just explain pass by reference. F of star IP, this means that this is being passed by reference, which means that X, whenever you are referring to X, actually star IP is getting modified, right? and that star IP is fixed, which was actually with the value I, the variable I. So x equal to 3 happens, right? Then IP equal to ampersand of y. This changes the value of IP, right? That doesn't mean that x changes. X is still referring to I. So whenever you change x, I is going to change because IP is pointing to I. Here IP equal to ampersand of y happens, and x equal to I plus x plus 2. So the value of I is 1. The value of x is also, sorry. The value of I, because of x equal to 3, it changes to 3. So the value of I becomes 3. The value of x is 3 and this value is 2. So therefore we get the value of x, which is actually referring to I, to be 3 plus 3 plus 2, which is 8, and that is what we are printing here, and therefore the call by reference should give the value 8. Has anybody found that? Everybody has found 6. Won't star IP valid to x and isn't I passed in call by reference? Yes, so star IP will evaluate to x. That is correct, but that doesn't mean that when you change the value of IP, the reference that x is pointing to will be star IP. That is going to happen in pass by name. That whenever you access x, it is going to refer to star IP irrespective of what IP is pointing to. Whereas in the context of pass by reference, if IP's variable, that whatever variable it is pointing to, that changes, variable x, which is the reference for star IP, will still continue pointing to the original variable I, right? So what you are mentioning happens in pass by name but does not happen in pass by reference. This you can actually check in C++ when you make int ampersand of x and just see if you are getting the same answer as it. I haven't checked it, so in case you find a different answer, please discuss. Okay. Won't star IP value to x, it isn't I passed in call by reference, star IP values to I. Star IP values to I, that is correct, but that happens only when IP has not been reassigned a value. In call by reference, I and x are both the same, yes, that is correct. But syntax should be f of, yeah, again, so syntax could be different. The syntax that you are talking about is in C++, but we are saying that this is the syntax given, C-like syntax, and we are using pass by reference. What happens? For example, even pass by value result is not there in C++, but we'll try to understand, we'll try to identify the value using the pass by reference mechanism using C syntax. The syntax is one part, the semantics is another, right? So we are taking C syntax, but we are applying a different semantics. Okay, Sarthak says that call by name will give value 3. Caro says after IP is set to ampersand, what would be the value of x? X will continue to be a reference for I, because x was a reference to star IP. Star IP was pointing to I. I mean IP was pointing to I, and therefore x was a reference to I. So even after IP gets changed, the x will still be referring to the value of I. Okay, Rudra and Sarthak got call by name as 3. Okay, if there are any confusions about pass by reference, still please ask. Okay, Nishchit also got 3. Syntax is wrong. Again, I will tell you that syntax is one part. You can have the syntax of the same language, but the semantics might differ. We are saying that we are keeping the syntax same. The pass, the call by the parameter passing mechanism we are changing. The semantics we are changing. If you refer to C language, it is always going to be pass by value except for arrays, and therefore we'll say that pass by value is going to be there for C. Assume that this is, if it is easy for you to understand, assume that this is a new language. It's a new language for which there is, I'm deciding what what is the parameter passing mechanism that I'm going to do, and for that I can have different mechanisms, right? Does call by name means that the whole function will be copied to the main? Unlike macros, no. However, I mean, that is also an implementation dependent thing, that you can have pass by name such that the body of the function can get copied, but you have to still worry about some scoping rules. In case of, for example, macros, the whole body is going to get copied into main, but there could be a language where you can have pass by name mechanism, but the body of the function might not be copied into the caller. You can still evaluate it, just that the string of the expression will get passed as a parameter, right? So that is still possible. Okay, Madhav Reddy also got 3. Okay, so let's see if that turns out to be correct. So in case of pass by name, wherever star IP appears, that is going to get substituted literally. Wherever X appears, that is going to get literally substituted by star IP, right? So that is our pass by name mechanism. So here we are going to say star IP equal to 3, right? What this is going to do is to assign the value 3 to variable I, because IP is currently pointing to 3, I. Then IP equal to ampersand of Y happens. This is okay. This does not involve any pass by name mechanism because we are not using X. However, IP starts pointing to ampersand of Y. This should be remembered. This was not creating an issue in the context of pass by reference, but this will change the answer because whenever I am using X, I am going to convert it into star IP, and therefore now star IP is going to refer to Y. The value of Y is going to be some random number, some garbage, that plus 2 plus I. The value of I, the value of I is what currently is 3 because of star IP equal to 3. So that 3 plus garbage plus 2 is going to give some garbage value to X, which is again going to be replaced with star IP, which is referring to Y, and therefore Y is going to get a garbage value. As far as I is concerned, its value was changed to 3, and that is going to be printed here, and therefore the output of this program should be, in case of call by name, the value 3. If somebody does not understand this, yeah, okay. Okay, so that is our call by name 3, and call by value result, let's work it out. Maybe I'll give a few more seconds now that you have understood most of the others, a few seconds to understand value result. So initially it is by value, and at the end of the function, that is going to get passed, copied to the original parameter which was passed. Okay, we'll finish that and then stop. Sarthak says 1, while Ravi, Raghu and Deepesh are saying 6. Madhav Reddy is saying 6. Karo says 6. Okay. Okay, so let's work on that. So f of star IP, this is going to be passed by value initially, but we have to remember that we are referring to star IP, right? Because that is going to be in the end copied. So the value of X becomes 3, which is a local variable. Star IP has not changed, which means that I has not changed so far. IP starts pointing to ampersand of Y. So IP is referring to Y. This IP is a global variable. IP is not passed to the function as a parameter, and therefore this IP refers to the global variable IP, which now starts pointing to Y. This value of I is still 1, right? Because X equal to 3 did not change its value. The value of X is 3, which is a local variable, so that becomes 4 plus 2, 6, and that gets assigned to x, which is again a local variable so far. So the value of x becomes 6 at the end of this function, which is going to get copied to star IP. However, star IP is the original parameter which was passed, and therefore the value of I will change to 6. I think what probably Sarthak and Nishchit felt is that since IP has changed, therefore we should be assigning this to whatever IP is pointing to. Yeah, so that I didn't mention, but yeah, it has to be the original parameter passed, which gets this value to I rather than to the variable y, right? So therefore, the call by value result will give the value 6 for I. Right? Nishchit and Sarthak, is this okay? So we have to refer to the original parameter which was passed. So that is in some sense by reference at the end. Right? Okay. Shivam Prasad has some question. Let's say in call by name, if we pass constant 6 minus f of 6, then copy pasting the constant 6 in f will become a problem. That is correct. So this you should view as you have a preprocessor directive, right? So let's say some macro xyz, and that xyz gets a parameter a, right? And you are saying that you have a statement inside that macro which says a equal to 5. That macro seems to be fine, but it will work only when you pass it a variable to it or an L value to it. If you say that you pass xyz the value 3, it is going to make the statement 3 equal to 5, and that will cause a problem. So the compiler will figure out an error. So similarly, in many of these mechanisms, if you do not have the proper L value, it will create a problem. Yeah, so all right. If there are any other questions, we can take those up now. Otherwise, we'll stop. One small, maybe I have mentioned it as classwork, but you should probably take it as a homework, and we'll discuss that tomorrow. You can create an example that does not use pointers the way I have used IP, but it produces different output under the 4 parameter passing mechanism. So if you can think of such an example, that will help. That will also clarify your doubts. Yeah, those who want to log off, they can log off, but Kairav and Rudra, I think, had doubt about pass by reference and pass by name mechanism. Is that clarified, or I want to go back to your question? If that is clarified, then we can, if you still have a question, we can discuss that. Okay, sure. Yeah, so can you repeat that question, Rudra? The difference between what? Pass by reference and? Why it change the value of I in call by value result? In call by value result, why it change the value of IP? Because IP is a global variable, IP is not passed as a parameter to F, and therefore when you are referring to IP, it is going to refer to the global whatever is outside F. If you are using static scoping, then you will refer to IP as the global variable, but even in the dynamic setting, you will look at some IP which is defined inside main. It is not defined, and therefore you are going to go to the global variable. So since IP is not passed as a parameter, this parameter passing mechanism does not apply to it, and therefore IP will change the actual IP variable.
No, sir, not that exactly IP.
Sorry, you are, wait. You are saying something, but I am not able to hear. Rudra.
Yeah, can I speak?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so by I mean that why IP changed the value of I in call by result. So like in call by value or call by reference, it didn't change, but that assignment IP equal to end of I changed the value of I. How?
No, it is not changing the value of I. It is changing the value of IP. The value of I is changing at the end of the function because it is referring to star IP. So at the function call, star IP is referring to I. So
Yeah.
therefore, whatever is the value of X at the end of the function, that is going to get copied to I. That's what it means.
Oh, okay. Fine.
So, but hasn't IP started to point to Y?
Why? That is correct. So the implementations, they take care of only the L value which was passed at the time of the call, right? And therefore, even if IP changes, that is still getting stored, and therefore you will change the value of I rather than the value of Y.
Okay, so it stores the value of IP at the time of calling and then
That
sets that value to the end result.
that is correct.
But sir,
Okay.
here IP is assigned to the position of I. So after this function is called, if I again call star of I, then will it like give us some error or will it print the value of I?
I didn't understand. Why will it give the error?
Like Y is a local variable, right?
If IP would have been pointing to Y, you are saying.
Sorry,
Okay,
what?
yeah. So after this f of star IP, if you try to do something with respect to IP, star IP, if you refer to, then I mean, it's likely that it will print some garbage value or some value which was Y, and it's an incorrect program essentially. You are right.
Okay.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. So we'll stop here. See you on Monday at 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock.